Hello and welcome to today's lesson. Today we will be talking about the direct method and the audiolingual method. It could be said that these two methods are pretty similar. In fact, it could be said that the audiolingual method is the direct method plus the use of some kind of audio reproduction device, be it a tape recorder, a record player, or nowadays an MP3 player. The direct method emerged at the beginning of the 20th century as a reaction to the grammar translation method. It was the method used at the Berlitz School of Languages, which is one of the most popular schools of languages in the world. Other schools of languages followed trade and, for purely commercial reasons and in order to differentiate themselves from Berlitz, they gave different names to the method, notably in lingua with its so-called in lingua method. From the 1940s and 50s onwards, and with the use of record players, cassette recorders, language laboratories, and so on, the label audiolingual methods became popular for roughly what had been known as the direct method. The direct and audiolingual method are still used by both Berlitz and in lingua, at least in the beginners courses, and these are the first and the second most popular language learning franchises in the world. So, in spite of the predominance of the communicative approach, there is no question that the audiolingual method is still going strong nowadays. What are the main characteristics of both the direct and the audiolingual method? Well, classroom instruction is conducted exclusively in the target language, so no L1 is allowed. Vocabulary and language structures and forms are systematically selected and graded from the simplest to the more complex, and from the most common in everyday use to the language used in less common situations. New material is presented in dialogue form, typically questions and answers between teacher and students or between students. There is a lot of emphasis on the development of oral and listening skills. All new materials are first introduced and practiced orally, and only when students have spent a lot of time practicing the oral skills will they move on to reading and writing. Grammar is taught inductively, that is, there is no explicit grammar teaching. Vocabulary is taught by mimicry, association, use of realia, etc., and never using translation. Remember, only the target language can be used. There is a lot of repetition and overlearning. The technique which is commonly associated with this method is drilling. Following behaviorist principles, it is assumed that language learning is acquiring a habit, and repetition will somehow ingrain grammar and vocabulary in the student's mind. And of course, there is a great emphasis on accuracy over fluency. Perfect pronunciation and perfect grammar are essential to this approach. Before discussing the advantages and disadvantages of this approach, let us hear a word from our sponsors. We will be back after the break. Welcome back. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this approach? Let's start with the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that drilling and repetition can be quite boring, and obviously they are not communicative. The lack of context for the repetition exercises may result in a loss of motivation, as well as making it difficult for students to grasp the use of what is being learned in a proper context. Another disadvantage, or maybe this could be an advantage depending on your point of view, is that there is a great dependence on teachers rather than on textbooks, and consequently, given the focus on accuracy, native teachers with a perfect pronunciation are required. Finally, as there is no explicit teaching of grammar and vocabulary, students are expected to have an excellent talent for inductive learning of both grammar rules and the meaning of words. But what about the advantages? Students who have learned a language using the direct or the audiolingual method usually boast of a very good pronunciation. They also develop very good conversation skills about everyday topics and situations. The emphasis on making students talk is certainly beneficial for shy, introverted students who tend not to participate much in class. It is, in sum, a very good method for those whose aim is to hold conversations in a foreign language in everyday situations. And what is your opinion about the direct method and the audiolingual method? Over to you now. This will be all for today. Thank you.